You're watching Sky News. Got some sad news now. The legendary Manchester United and Scotland striker Denis Law has died. A statement from his family says, "It is with a heavy heart that we tell you our father, Denis Law, has sadly passed away. He fought a tough battle, but finally he is now at peace." We would like to thank everyone who contributed to his well-being and care, past and much more recently. We know how much people supported and loved him, and that love was always appreciated and made the difference. Thank you. That statement from the family of footballing legend Denis Law, who has passed away. Denis Law, of course, had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia some time ago, and something he had struggled with for a number of years. He has sadly passed away. Our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, is here in the studio with me, known quite simply, Rob, as the King.
Yeah, one of the great players that we've seen play in England and Scotland. In fact, Denis Law, one of the greatest Scottish players of all time, and really that prowess in front of goal was instrumental to the rebirth of Manchester United. He joined after the Munich air disaster, which killed players in 1958, decimated the team, and Matt Busby wanted to bring the team back to life again, and it was with Denis Law that they won titles again. They won the Championship and ultimately really the European Cup in 1968, becoming a real all-time great of Manchester United, immortalised to this day outside Old Trafford with that Holy Trinity statue, which evokes that great forward line of the time, Best, Law and Charlton, and synonymous forever with that tremendous success at Manchester United in the 60s. There was a bittersweet end to his United career. They released him and he went across town to Manchester City, and his infamous backheel goal actually contributed, or wasn't directly responsible, for relegating Manchester United in the 1970s, but forever a Manchester United great with those locks of hair, so memorable. And in the 70s, he finally made it to a World Cup with Scotland, and really that helped to establish him as one of the all-time Scottish greats as well, guiding them to a World Cup. And, you know, his troubles in recent years with Alzheimer's and dementia is really symbolising the struggle for so many of his generation of footballers. It was just a week ago I was with quite a few former Manchester United players in Manchester talking about the struggle with dementia. Many believe was a result of actually playing football, the sport they love. We have now heard from Manchester United. They've said in a statement, "Everyone at Manchester United is mourning the loss of Denis Law, the king of the Stretford End, who has passed away aged 84. With 237 goals in 404 appearances, he will always be celebrated as one of the club's greatest and most beloved players. The ultimate goal scorer, his flair, spirit and love for the game made him the hero for a generation." The United statement concludes, "Our deepest condolences go out to Denis's family and many friends. His memory will live on forevermore."
Yeah, desperately sad. And when he was diagnosed back in 2021, it was August 2021, when he announced that he was ill, he said he'll no longer be able to sign items for fans, but will continue supporting his club and the Denis Law Legacy Trust. He was 81 at the time, and he wanted to make that statement, he said, while he was still able. And the mere fact that the first thing that came to his mind, that he would no longer be able to sign items for his fans, says something about the man, doesn't it? Tell us a bit about his character, his personality, his relationship with those fans who adored him.
Yeah, he really was almost perfect for the era, the swinging 60s. He was a player who really brought together that exuberance, the liveliness in terms of how he played. Denis Law was skillful and speedy, and he really had that sort of scoring swagger of a showman that appealed so much to the United fans in the Stretford End. And to them, he always was the king. He didn't get to play, so regrettably, in that 1968 final against Benfica to win the European Cup due to injury, but his goals have been so instrumental. And it's why he's held in such affection. Why he was around the club so often in the subsequent years. He was a pundit as well, quite often on Sky at many matches as well. And, you know, he's the only Scottish player to have ever won the Ballon d'Or, the award for the best player in Europe in 1964. And, you know, it was such a different era. Now we have these lavish ceremonies. Then it was just presented to him on the pitch at Old Trafford, perhaps really not fully appreciating just what he managed to contribute, because, you know, the goals that he provided were reaching incredible levels. He scored 46 in all competitions for Manchester United in the 1963-64 season, and that is still a club record to this day. And in this era, there are a lot more matches in a season as well. So it says something of his scoring feat, and that was, you know, helping them on their way to eventually bring the trophies back. He also scored 30 goals for Scotland, and he is level with Kenny Dalglish, but he actually scored them in far fewer games. So he's the most prolific scorer Scotland has ever seen. There is a statue of him at Aberdeen. He never actually played for his hometown club because he was actually brought to England at such a young age. He came to Huddersfield, managed by Bill Shankly, of course, on to achieve such great success at Liverpool, and even went abroad, one of the pioneering players to go abroad, played at Torino. It didn't quite work out for him then, but all along the way, transfer records were broken by Denis Law, joining Manchester City and Torino as well. So, you know, it says something about how much he was valued, and, you know, just some of the way he's remembered. The National Football Museum talks about his combined speed, skill, bravery and aggression. And, you know, it's why Manchester United perhaps are the club they are today. It's why we focus so much on their decline now at the moment, not just because of all the success in Manchester United's Alex Ferguson era, but from the 1960s in Sir Matt Busby's side as well, the real start of Manchester United's sort of place around the world as such a force.
Yeah, it's worth reiterating that statement from Manchester United, isn't it? Everyone at Manchester United is mourning the loss of Denis Law, the king of the Stretford End, who's passed away aged 84. With 237 goals in 404 appearances, he will always be celebrated as one of the club's greatest and most beloved players. The ultimate goal scorer, his flair, spirit and love for the game made him the hero of a generation. Our deepest condolences go out to Denis's family and many friends. His memory will live on forevermore, and his family also paying tribute to him. It is with a heavy heart that we tell you our father, Denis Law, has sadly passed away. He fought a tough battle, but finally he is now at peace. We would like to thank everyone who contributed to his well-being and care, past and much more recently. We know how much people supported and loved him, and that love was always appreciated and made the difference. Thank you. That statement from Denis Law's family. And Rob, you touched there on how he played, and he'll always be remembered, won't he, for his dynamic playing style, that incredible agility, and he was able to score goals from almost any situation. It really was quite remarkable.
Yes, and perhaps many of those might seem like an era from times gone by. I mean, on this day of days, we're sort of reflecting on Erling Haaland signing a new contract at Manchester City until 2034. We think of him as the great finisher. Well, many generations before, there was Denis Law, and you know, just hearing from Brian Kidd, the former player who's provided quotes via the journalist Andy Mitten, he's talked about him being an unbelievable finisher. He scored every type of goal, and he recalls a quote: "If you're ever wide, don't look up. Put the cross in early. If I'm not there, it's my fault." Talking about you know, how he finished, and you know, he had that sort of real sort of flair, not only on the pitch but also off it. That sort of those qualities that endeared him to so many. And to reflect actually on that, you know, trinity of the statue existing outside the ground, it was unveiled about sort of just under 20 years ago. You've got, you know, Denis Law, Bobby Charlton, and you have got George Best as well, and you know, it really encapsulates just what a trio they had. And you know, he was also renowned for the way his collar was up as well on his shirt, something that so many sort of try to mimic as well. And
well, we've got a still actually that Manchester United have just released on social media. Let's have a look. There he is, Denis Law, 1940 to 2025. That incredible grin as well. I mean, he had the hair, didn't he? He had the 60s swagger, and he had that smile.
Yeah, he did, and you know, it's obviously why it's so troubling for so many in recent years. Obviously, his decline and, you know, that struggle for so many players of his generation, as I was mentioning, having been with, you know, some last week about the fact he had that struggle with Alzheimer's and dementia as well. And, you know, many players you speak to don't regret their careers, but do often wonder just how much football might have contributed. The heavy ball, the constant heading with it as well. But, you know, that obviously made it a very difficult period for the last few years for his family. And, you know, in fact, his daughter, Denis Law, actually worked for the club for many years in the media department. So there's that sort of link through the era as well at Manchester United. But, you know, when people look at those images, it's him as a, you know, we see him getting his royal honour there, the king finally being honoured at the palace. But it is perhaps that image with the wing collar that we so affectionately think of Denis Law. And, you know, he once said that that guy Cantona copied me, you know, because Eric Cantona, the French player, was at Manchester United in the 1990s. He was perhaps known for how he had his collar up as well. But certainly one of those few players perhaps to play across Manchester United and Manchester City, those two great rivals. And it says so much about him, the fact that even though he was part of the City side that helped to relegate Manchester United, he has such affection that he's held in. And at the moment, it's a time when so many are reflecting on him, and you certainly sense those tributes from Manchester United, just remembering what a player he was for them, and you know, so instrumental in winning so many trophies, the league titles, the FA Cup as well, the scoring record that stands to this day for a single season.
Rob, stay with us while we go to the sports writer Henry Winter, who's on the line for us. Henry, good to have you with us on the programme this evening. Very sad news, this, isn't it? What are your memories of Denis Law?
Jonathan, it's very sad news. And as you've been saying, and the words you used, the smile. I mean, he made people smile. He made football smile. He made the ball smile. He was a fantastic finisher, an amazing servant wherever he went, Huddersfield, Manchester City, Torino, and of course, Manchester United. You know, he won the Ballon d'Or there. He won the title there in 65 and 67. You know, he was very important in Manchester United getting to the European Cup final. Unfortunately, he didn't play in the Cup final itself, European Cup final. But what a player! I mean, he was just a lovely guy, and that's why the outpouring of emotion in football, outside football, will be about an incredible career, but also an incredible man. You see him smiling here. And I went to see him once when he actually found his book. I don't know if you can see it. I went to see him at his golf club just to talk to him about his book. And, you know, the first 5 minutes was just talking about what type of tea I wanted. I mean, he was just like that. He was a very warm, very generous, very likeable man. So I think we should mourn the man as well as a great player tonight.
Yes, very well said. And just tell us a bit more about his abilities on the pitch. What was it about his playing style that stood out for you?
Well, with Manchester United, I think only Wayne Rooney and Sir Bobby Charlton scored more. Prolific. With Scotland, I think he scored 30 goals, and obviously, you know, ranks alongside Kenny Dalglish in terms of prolific output for Scotland. Just a fantastic player, just an incredible eye for goal, just the way that he could finish. I mean, he was good in the air. He could score from range, but he understood the sort of the art and craft of being a master finisher, and he just scored and scored and scored. Just a remarkable footballer. I mean, in modern parlance, he would probably go for, I mean, hate to bring everything down to money, but that's football nowadays. But he'll probably be 130, 140 million pound centre forward at his peak.
And of course, he was diagnosed a couple of years ago with both Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. And he put a statement out at the time saying that he'd been diagnosed and that it was an extremely difficult time. He said it's incredibly challenging and problematic having this disease. And I've witnessed many friends go through this. You hope it won't happen to you, even make jokes about it whilst ignoring the early signs because you don't want it to be true. You get angry, frustrated, confused, and then worried for your family as they will be the ones dealing with it. However, the time has come, he said, to tackle this head on. excuse the pun. And of course, many of his friends and former colleagues also suffered from this terrible disease.
They did, and I can remember pre-COVID, he was talking about losing some very close teammates. And he didn't just see them simply as teammates. I think he referred to them there as friends. And that's, you know, the great tribute, one of the many great tributes you can pay to Denis Law. And I'm sure you'll have, you know, people who knew him, maybe even played with him, they just liked him. He was a very engaging character. You know, he played for Manchester United and Manchester City and is revered on both sides. He had friends on both sides of what for some is a divide in Manchester, and that just shows the sort of, you know, the spirit of the man. And look, our thoughts in all this must go out to his family, because, you know, they have been dealing with this. And, you know, for us, he was a footballing legend, but for him, you know, he was a father, you know, a family member. And that is, you know, and it is very tragic, but, you know, we should just remember what he leaves behind, the body of work that he leaves behind, those precious memories. There'll be Manchester United fans sort of watching this tonight, Manchester City fans, probably Torino fans, where people actually said he didn't do so well in Italy, but actually he was quite impressive in terms of his goal return. You see him here in that familiar Manchester United pose and the strip and the smile, and City here as well in that iconic strip as well. And they'll just remember and they'll cherish all those incredible memories. So, you know, it's sad that he's left us. And obviously your thoughts are completely with his family tonight, because they've lost someone very special.
Of course, absolutely right. And we've been talking today, Henry, about Erling Haaland's remarkable new contract. And we should remember, shouldn't we, that Denis Law was sold for a British record fee not once, but 3 times during his career.
Yeah, I think he once said that his first wage at Huddersfield Town was £4, and then his final wage, I think, was sort of £200 a week. So, you know, football has its own inflationary values. But Manchester City, their tributes will flow today. I mean, it's been a remarkable day for them, but they will flow for Denis Law. I mean, for the younger generation, how do you actually compare him to a sort of modern player? Except what you can say about Denis Law is that he will walk into any team in the world, because he was that good. At his peak in '64, when he won the Ballon d'Or and he scored all those goals for Manchester United, you know, he was remarkable. And for Scotland as well, let's not forget, you know, how well he played for Scotland too.
Henry, Rob here. How do you think he will go down in terms of importance at Manchester United over the years in terms of that rebirth?
Well, he's a legend. He's got a statue outside the Holy Trinity. I mean, he was just a remarkable player, obviously, with George Best and the great Sir Bobby Charlton. He's one of the greats. I mean, just wherever he went, he scored and he brought smiles. I mean, he was just remarkable. And you have to remember the sort of, you know, the adversity that he overcame. He had a squint as a kid. He played in spectacles, and he went to Huddersfield. They actually addressed that, and he had an operation, and, you know, and he was just a remarkable player. But I think that how he will be remembered is just as a great man as well as a great player. And that's the greatest accolade that you can give someone who was a star, but was just so grounded and so likable.
And he was around the club so much in the following years, wasn't he? And that's the whole thing at Manchester United, isn't it? That connection with the past and some of the greats of the game being around.
Yeah, I mean, all the great clubs have that, and Manchester United particularly. I mean, wherever you go, if you go down to the training ground, Carrington, you see the players, the pictures on the wall that they've developed, you know, that who then went and played for them as well, players that they brought in like Denis Law. And I'm sure anyone at Manchester United, if you go down to Carrington, if you go to Old Trafford, that they will talk about him, but they'll talk about his smile, they'll talk about his warmth, they'll talk about the fact that he would listen and ask you questions, would ask them questions, as well as obviously, you know, the many questions that you would want to ask Denis Law about his fabulous career.
And how much do you reckon he'd be worth today? We've been reflecting on Erling Haaland today, but those goals from Denis Law, still having that United single-season scoring record today, he'd certainly go for a fair amount, wouldn't he? Even though he set so many records, of course, himself.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I mean, probably 130 million. I mean, if you know, he would just be off the scale in terms of he's priceless. I think you would have to say because of because of his ability, his consistency, his determination, the fact that he was a single-minded finisher, but then also was a fabulous team player as well, and not simply on the pitch. You know, he was so liked off the pitch by his teammates, and you know those who have survived will be mourning a close friend as well as a fabulous footballing colleague.
Henry, thank you so much. Henry Winter, sports writer there. We appreciate your memories and your thoughts on the legend Denis Law.